Hey guys, welcome to Coding with DC. In this video, we are going to talk about immutable versus mutable and why is this critical in programming. So this is a really key concept that applies to all environments in computer science. And let's start with why is this so critical. So, as we said, it is a concept that is applied to all programming languages, especially if you are a JavaScript coder, it is super important to you. But also if you are a Java programmer, if you are a Python programmer, or with any other language. If you are using frameworks like React or like Angular, it is super important to know it too. So this is a topic that is usually asked in many software engineering interviews for, I would say, any role. So you have to know it if you want to have success as a software engineer or as a software developer. And if you don't know it in an interview, especially if you are in a mid-level or more, it's a red flag that you don't want to have for sure. Okay, so also the concept of immutability, we are going to see that it has its pros and cons, but it eliminates many bugs. Let's see what are the advantages and disadvantages of each of them. Okay, so here we have an example. This is the memory that we have in our computer. This is another memory. And let's see how it works when we are working with mutable data structures or with immutable data structures. So let's start with mutable. Let's say that we just declare an age, declare a variable called age in this case, and we assign a value like 5. Okay? So internally, we don't have to do it in any programming languages, or at least not the common ones, like the high-level ones, like JavaScript, Java, Python, or any other of these ones. But when you create a variable, it basically reserves a space in memory and save it there. Okay? Then what happens if we want to change the value of that variable? If we change the value, what is going to happen is that it's going to check what is the address in memory where we have stored this variable called age. So it's basically here. And we're going to override the value of 5 in this case, and we're going to put 6 in this case, right? So we say it's not 5 anymore, it is 6. Awesome. That's how mutable variables or mutable data structures work. You will think like, yeah, it's pretty obvious, right? It always should work in this way. But that's not the case. Let's see how it works with immutable data structures. So if we have an immutable data structures, and let's say that this variable is immutable, we just declare like the same variable, which is an age equals to 5, and it starts like in the same way. It assigns a space in memory and it stores there. Cool. But what happens when we change it to 6 and it is an immutable variable? Well, instead of going to the same address and override the value, it is going to create another space in memory with the value 6. Okay? So that's the difference between mutable and immutable. We're going to see the advantages and disadvantages, but this is the difference. Okay? So when you have mutable data structures, it basically overrides the value in the same address in memory, and when we have immutable data structures, it, instead of overriding the same address, it's going to create a new space in memory and put the same this same variable but with another value. Okay, that is the only difference between mutable and immutable. But why would we want to do it. Okay. So in this case, as we said, age points to the new space in memory, and the first one is still there. Okay. So let's start. These are the advantages, and these are the advantages of mutable and immutable. So if we have mutable, it is the best use of space. Why? Because as we know, it doesn't create new spaces in memory, right? So we basically save space in memory. We just overwrite the same address, and we don't have to create new, we don't have to use more space in memory. Okay, it can be super important in some cases, like we're going to see. But if you have, for example, a super long string, and you have to modify it in a for loop, and you are going to basically, I don't know, modify every letter of super big text, right? Each time that you modify a letter, if it is immutable, it is going to create a new version of the variable in a new space in memory. That's if it is immutable, right? So we don't have to do that with mutable data structures, and that's why mutable is better for the use of space. It is also better in time, because when you create a new space in memory, you have to copy what you had in the last one to the new one, right? So because it doesn't have to create a copy, it is better in time when we are in immutable data structures. But if we are in immutable data structures, we don't have what is called side effects. And this is basically the main reason why people want to use immutable data structures. You are not going to have any bug because of references to the same address in memory. Okay, so you know that if you modify something, we are going to work with another variable, so we are not going to mess it up with the value of the previous one. There is one concept in computer science which is called concurrent programming, which is basically that your program is executing many things at the same time, and then you have to synchronize them. With immutable data structures, it is super more easier to work with them. That's one of the advantages. You don't have to understand it in a perfect way if you are not familiar with that, but that's something to point it out. And the third thing that is super important too is that it's simpler to test it and debug it. With immutable data structures, you can basically reach each of the previous versions of your variable that has been modified, and that's why you are going to be, it's going to be far easier to debug it if you need it, right? Okay, so let's see some examples of the data structures in JavaScript, because it's right now the scope in this channel. So the mutable data structures in JavaScript are the objects in general, and the properties of the objects, and the arrays. If you modify the array, it's going to be modified in the address that it is assigned in memory, so it's going to be mutable. What data structures are immutable? Well, the strings. As we said, if we have a really long string and we modify it, like in a for loop or whenever you have to modify it, each time that you modify a string, it is going to create a new version behind the scenes. Okay, so you're going to spend more space. The number object, for example, is immutable too, and the primitive values like string, nums, null, undefined, booleans, these are all immutable data structures in JavaScript. Cool. So for the scope of this video, I just wanted you to know the difference, the key difference between them. I hope you really enjoyed the video. If you have any comment, any doubt, please leave it in the comments below. Please smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, see you in the next one.